Dr. Moira Walker was wholly dedicated to the founding and development of Dorset Action on Abuse. Moira's vision and passion in bringing together the organisation in 2003 and her ongoing dedication was an inspiration to all of us who became involved in Dorset Action on Abuse, later Hurting to Healing, and which continued to bring much needed counselling and support of different types to adult survivors of childhood abuse in Dorset. In addition, it was with great pride for all of us that in December 2012, Moira received the Queen's Award for Voluntary Service for Dorset Action on Abuse, the MBE for voluntary groups, which is a testament to Moira's achievement. Moira was a shining example of someone who, as a co-founder and volunteer chair, put enormous energy into the charity that was so much needed by adult survivors of all forms of childhood abuse and neglect, and it still is. Moira was always quick to express her support and gratitude and appreciation in so many different ways for everyone who had supported her work. After Moira died, we were determined to carry on and take forward the very important work that Moira had started when she founded Dorset Action on Abuse.
Hello, my name is Gail Longhurst. I have volunteered for Hurting to Healing as a counsellor and supervisor since 2008, and I'm the current chair of Trustees. In February, my colleague Dr. Zoe Poole and I made the very difficult decision to inform trustees that the charity would soon reach a point where it was unsustainable. The main reason being that Hurting to Healing had insufficient experienced counsellors to work with the increasing numbers and complexity of cases being referred to us, mainly through the NHS. Together, we put forward a plan to trustees to ensure we could professionally and ethically fulfil our commitment to the clients already in counselling with Hurting to Healing. And through the hard work of all our amazing team, this was achieved on the 30th of September. Since February, alongside our important therapeutic work with service users, volunteer counsellors, supervisors and employees, working through the many threads required to close a charity, we began to look to the future. Sadly, a future without Hurting to Healing. Our thoughts turned to who might take on the challenge to support adult survivors of childhood abuse. We want to share some of the struggles we've encountered since 2004, when Dr. Moira Walker and Anne Daniels, our co-founders, first inspired our core group of volunteers to begin the work of supporting and then setting up one-to-one counselling for survivors of childhood abuse. The need for a specialist agency that really understands the complexity of childhood abuse and the enduring impact on survivors is as great today as it has ever been. And in the words of one survivor, he spoke of childhood abuse as the biggest crime that society doesn't want to deal with, society as a whole, because it is embarrassing. And it is a crime against our children. But will we continue to be too embarrassed and brush it under the carpet? There is no shortage of service users, even as we were closing our therapeutic services. Despite notifications, we continue to receive requests and referrals into our service. The need for services far exceeds the support available, and it is a false economy to continue with inadequate services for survivors. In our experience, many service users will suffer from physical and psychological conditions as a result of their trauma. Coping strategies such as alcohol, drugs, and self-harm can seem to be the best choice in an overwhelming world. The earlier we are able to work with service users, the greater the opportunity to relieve suffering and make a difference to their lives. In turn, that helps save money. From the beginning, Hurting to Healing volunteers have been the backbone of our service. And this has been in many roles: counselling, administration, supervision, opening the door with a smile and a hello. Many of the counsellors would volunteer for a couple of years and choose to stay longer, commenting on how supported they felt. In recent years, we have seen a change. More trainee counsellors are gaining the experience they need to become a qualified counsellor and then moving on. Austerity messages of recent years have played their part, and people need to earn a living, and qualified counsellors have the same right to be paid for the work they do. They equally have the right to choose to volunteer their services without being criticised for their choice. Hurting to Healing recognised this and tried to introduce a new service, H2H Choice, that addressed the right for paid work, provided a gentle career pathway into private practice, whilst also bringing in a useful income stream for the charity. However, this plan needed to be in place much earlier. Attracting trustees who are willing to roll up their sleeves and help in general has been a struggle, and not just at Hurting to Healing. This is in stark contrast to the enthusiasm and passion we enjoyed from our original core group. It places a greater strain on a few trustees and those managing the day-to-day running of the charity. If trustees do not share a passion for the work and mission of a charity, it impacts their level of commitment, and the danger of that is engagement stops when the trustee meeting ends. A therapeutic base is essential. Visitors to the home of Hurting to Healing have described it as having a tranquil atmosphere. This is exactly the type of experience we wish to create for our service users, volunteers and employees. However, this priceless environment also becomes a substantial financial liability that needs to be managed. Fundraising is a big issue, and Hurting to Healing acknowledged the generosity of the Big Lottery Community Fund in awarding 2 5-year grants. These awards enabled Hurting to Healing to establish its base at Seaforth House, funded 3 employees, and helped our overall running costs. And for some time, this gave Hurting to Healing some stability. Despite the large percentage of referrals received from the NHS services, Hurting to Healing has never received any financial support from the NHS. Putting the responsibility onto a charity for their patients seems to be a common practice. Hurting to Healing endeavoured to set up a friends group. People were willing to join the group, but many were less willing to participate in fundraising. And when we consider the trust issues many service users have, it is understandable that fundraising publicly can feel daunting. Obtaining grants is increasingly difficult in a very competitive market. The mission of Hurting to Healing to work with adult survivors is not as attractive to funders as some of the children or animal charities. And this seems bizarre when we consider that at the centre of our work is that wounded child within. And over the years, Hurting to Healing has provided some exceptional training in the field of childhood trauma. It is essential that anyone working in this field remains up to date in the knowledge of trauma and appropriate working practices. And as part of our legacy going forward, we are immensely proud to acknowledge that as a result of quality training, supervision, and mentoring provided by Hurting to Healing, there are so many more trauma-informed counsellors, social workers, midwives, and most importantly of all, adult survivors of childhood abuse. So who will be the next agency to take up the challenge for adult survivors of childhood abuse? In conclusion, I would like to end with the words of Dr. Maura Walker, the very first chair of Hurting to Healing, And this is from her book, Abuse Questions and Answers for Counsellors and Therapists, July 2003. I have worked as a therapist with abuse survivors for many years now, and have also trained others to undertake the work and supervised many working in this painful area. I am continually impressed by the tenacity and bravery, not only of survivors, but also of those who care for them and work with them. A particular mention must go to those who put such enormous energy into setting up voluntary services that are literally lifesavers for many, and they do it with few resources and often too little support. However, another feeling runs alongside. That is one of continuing horror at the scale of the problem, the forms it takes, the numbers involved, the appalling impact on the lives of so many adults as a result of childhood abuse, and the suffering and pain that is being inflicted, even as I write, on unimaginably large numbers of children. Although this horror may be seen to be reflected in society at large, it is yet to be translated into sufficient funding and sufficiently coherent and effective policies and service provision. If it is to have meaning, it has to be backed up by money. And somehow we have to turn ourselves into a society that takes a wider responsibility for the well-being of children. They are our future. And to ensure this, they must be the responsibility of a larger community. While services for the protection of children need to be scrutinised and need to be adequately resourced, the buck does not stop there. Children live in our streets, go to our schools, are our neighbours and part of our community. Turning a blind eye, seeing them as only the responsibility of designated others, is dangerous. Moira Walker.